Okay, François, how you doing, man? Welcome to the BlueMX podcast.
Thanks, man. Thanks, Rabbi, for having me. It's kind of fun to be on the other side of the camera.
Absolutely. And I've been seeing you. We've been keeping in touch on social media for a while now. We touched base, I think, week and a half ago.
You
I'm
bet.
not sure. Time's kind of
Yeah.
weird right now, but about that because you've been so vocal on LinkedIn, and I mean, all your posts get a lot of traction. And I myself engage with it a lot, just 'cause I like the messaging, like the thoughts behind it. So I really wanted to get to know the thoughts behind the posts, who you are, and where they kind of originate from. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, great. Happy to be on. Thanks again for having me. So, I started in the tech space as a help desk jockey. So I was a nerd like 20 years ago.
Hmm.
And 10 years, kind of fast forward 10 years later when I was kind of moved along in my career, I remember in 2006, I was looking at LinkedIn the other day when I joined. And, that was when people were like, what is this platform? Like, why are you inviting me? Right. It was almost weird, right? It was like some new platform. And, if you were in tech, I think people kind of got it. It was like this virtual Rolodex. But only took a couple of years when basically everybody in your network was starting to be on it. And then it's, if we fast forward to now, I've noticed kind of in the last year, it's really exploded. I don't need to tell you about all the numbers in terms of people on there. And I think one of the really interesting things that people are seeing is kind of like Facebook, maybe back in 14 or 15, there's just not a lot of people producing content on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
and there's an opportunity. So, I think that's where people are trying to really capture that. And so I've really doubled down since I think November this year, and just in terms of being consistent with the posting. But whenever people are kind of going, well, what's your advice, or kind of what's the secret? We both know there's never a secret or a hack. It's consistency, but I think it's as important, if not more important, to have your engagement. So you can post all day, but if you're not engaging with other people, so being part of those conversations, you're not going to get it back. And I always give people the example of, it's like a live networking event. If you and I meet, Ravi, at a networking event, we're going to have some small talk. We're going to talk about things. And, it's probably going to be better if I'm listening. If I just
Hmm.
come in there and I'm like, hey, Ravi, here's my business card, it's not going to end well, right? Like, you're not going to be like, sweet, let's get this transaction going. And I don't think it's that much different. And I find it fascinating that people have a hard time with that. I think they just think it's this new medium where they can go and sell, and that's
Yeah.
fallen flat on its face.
Yeah. Like, so that's interesting that you've been on the platform for a while. You said since 2006? Yeah. Only recently I realized the power of LinkedIn. So I've only been on LinkedIn for about an hour, I think an hour, year and a half now. Like before that, LinkedIn was just a place for your resume.
Totally.
The resume builder. I could
Totally.
wait to like just catalog it and just sync up your resume thing. It's
Totally.
never meant to be like never seen as a social network, at least for me and my friends, my generation, right? But I didn't realize how old LinkedIn was. It was been around since like almost the 90s, was it?
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
and it's interesting, right? Because I just don't think it had the value there, and I think you nailed it, right? It was just basically a digital resume, right? So whereas now, I mean, it's almost social proof. Like, we all start, I think, the journey in terms of like looking for somebody providing a service or product. So I might stumble on BlueMix. I'll look at your website, but when I look at Ravi, I'll be like, well, who is Ravi? And you'll have probably a link to your other social feeds, but I'll go to LinkedIn, and then I'll be like, okay, yeah, he's real. These are the things he's done, these are some of his connections, maybe there's some recommendations. Oh, cool, here's some stuff he's been commenting on. So now it is, obviously it's much bigger than that digital resume, but there's some social proof. And the reality is, the statistics are out there that there's, most like executives are going on there now,
Mhm.
to check that out. Like, are you legit? Is your company there? Is your company engaging? So if you didn't have a good website, you're already dead in the water. But now if you're not even on LinkedIn, people aren't even going to believe you exist.
Yep. Like absolutely, and I think that's what it is. Like I think you nailed it by saying it's a way to social proof people, a way to validate that they're real and genuine and who they are.
Yeah.
Like it's interesting because like business is basically built on trust.
Yep.
Like it's us trusting each other, and these tools all come into play to help engage that trust, to verify the other person on the other end. And it's interesting, even though like we've evolved so much with these tools, we still follow these old principles, right? Humans have been doing business with each other for forever. Like I'll argue, even us doing this podcast here is almost a transaction, right?
Yep.
For you to come here and trust that you can come here and like have like a valid time where
Right.
it's a true platform for you to share your thoughts and not be like an ambush or anything like that.
Yep.
You have the ability of going and seeing into LinkedIn or other social medias or
For sure.
all these tools So you
Sure.
have the proof of who we are and who we say that we are. But I think the interesting about LinkedIn is how it's blown up as like a business tool, right?
Mm.
Beyond just like a sales platform or beyond just a resume, beyond just a contact card or digital outlet. It has kind of evolved the landscape where people who want to do virtual business now are not linked to just phone calls anymore. People are just connecting directly through that because you can follow each other,
Yep.
hear each other's thoughts, what you think about the landscape, and I think business evolved to become sales, especially evolved to become a transfer of ideas,
Yeah.
and that's what we're seeing, right? Sorry, I just got a call, so I got distracted there.
Yeah.
But what is your the platform has changed the landscape? Do you think like business has evolved so that LinkedIn has become the tool it is, or it has like these tools change business by giving more social proof and ability?
It's interesting, I mean, I think, so a few thoughts, I've seen a lot of commentary around, people saying, what do I post? What do I put out there? And I've seen a lot of content as well around people saying it's becoming too Facebooky, right? Like people are now posting pictures of their kids and pictures of their dogs and their cats. And so, you know, I guess kind of back to your question, I think at the end of the day now, I mean, like there's Facebook and LinkedIn, and LinkedIn is kind of, is people with their suit on, you could say, right? But the reality is, like, and this working from home scenario has basically, the lines were already getting blurry, right? You had casual Friday, and then, it was like, oh, I see Ravi, out at the park. Well, he's not dressed the same as at work, but Ravi's Ravi. And now, working from home, we're like, yeah, well, we have people see people's dogs and cats, and the reality is like, this is who we are. And so, I think what I've seen actually, what's interesting is on LinkedIn, where a lot of people get a lot of traction is when their posts and what they're sharing is more personal, because, if all you're doing is like, hey, this is my product, this is what it does, people are kind of like, I don't care, I can go read about your product. I want to know about you, because humans are working and doing transactions with humans, and they want to build that trust. And so when they see you being more open and more genuine, I think there's a natural connection. And I've also seen that when people are being a little bit more kind of raw and not so happy clappy, like, hey, everything's, I'm winning, we're crushing it. Like, the reality is, we all know that's like 10% of your day, maybe even 5%. The rest of the time, you're like slogging it out, you're losing, you're getting rejected. And when I see people being very open about, rejection, things not working, I think that's where they really, people kind of go, yeah, finally people are willing to kind of talk about this. And it's reality. We all know that if if all our posts are all just high fives, it's fake, right? It's just this echo chamber of people basically saying, hey, all we're doing is winning. When you and I know, you might prospect 50 people, you might hear back from 2, and you might get a meeting with 1. It's not all kind of like glory. So I think, the piece on LinkedIn that's been interesting is that, people are wanting to see that personal side of people, because they want to get to kind of know the person on the other side, and know, the real side of them. And that's, yeah. I think that's actually been a surprising piece where the platform's done really good. And is it kind of like blending and blurring over the lines of Facebook? I don't know, man. I don't know what the right answer is there.
Yeah. So going to that question, right? Blurring the line between Facebook and LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I mean, should people be different on these different platforms, because they are meant for different use cases, right? Or like, do you tailor like a social media like personality?
Yeah.
Right. Project one view of yourself on LinkedIn, one view on Instagram, one view on Facebook, which people are naturally doing. Or do you try to be the same person on all these platforms and like project the same kind of content?
That's a really good question. And I think, I've heard this question even on LinkedIn, right? Like, some people are like, well, I sell to, guys that have steel mills. They aren't on LinkedIn. And my response to that is like, great, well, like, find where they are and go see them there. But in 2020, there's like a super high probability someone connected to someone within that organization is on LinkedIn, like a board member or a shareholder. So somebody is connected there. But, to your point, we've all seen those memes floating around, like, what was it, a month ago, where Dolly Parton had her LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram kind of persona.
Yeah.
And, is my persona or what I post on Instagram, for example, different? Sure. But, I also know people on LinkedIn who have that specific persona because of who they're targeting, right? Like, I know some people, their posts are like 80% emoji, But my guess is, I'm going to make a guess, if you're like trying to sell into, guys in the financial sector, it's going to be a little bit more buttoned up, right? And I know some people who, use a lot more humor. So I think, to your question, you can have a different persona on Twitter and on LinkedIn, on TikTok if you want. I don't think there's a right answer there, because I think you're probably targeting different people. But the reality is people are going to find you there now, right? So if you don't want people to know the Ravi on Twitter, then don't put the Ravi on Twitter. But for LinkedIn specifically, when I really doubled down on November around spending more time and building that brand, I've been very deliberate around it, right? So I mean, I could show up here on a tank top, but that's not the perception I want people to have. Do I wear a tank top at the beach? Sure. Am I the scrawniest guy there? Absolutely. But it doesn't matter, right? Like, but if I was a personal trainer, and there are some on LinkedIn, and some people kind of like shake their head, but the reality is, like, it's a business platform, right? It's B2B and it is B2C, right? Because you can sell directly to people. You're building that brand. You want that image of what you want people to think about you. So I don't know, man. Like, I think that, again, the lines have been blurring, and now you almost can't hide anymore, right? I mean, you could be a business on top, party on the bottom, but the reality is, like, whatever you want people to see, you got to put out there. And some people, do a really good job of building out that brand. And if I'm targeting people in a specific area and I know they're looking for something, then I got to tailor that.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk a bit about that, because you're a seasoned sales leader as well. So that's why you're seeing this platform as for what it is, like, the potential to reach people, an audience at a different level. Can you talk about your sales history and where this mindset kind of came from?
Yeah, no, great question. And so, yeah, when you asked me earlier, I kind of went straight from, the 10 years of being in the weeds on the technical side to straight to LinkedIn. And then the other 10 years of that, I was in the consulting side, and then ended up moving into sales. And, what I've seen in the last few years, and my approach has always been, like, I still tell people, like, 20 years ago when I was like on a help desk helping people, I enjoyed that. And I'm still looking at it as, like, if, I'm trying to prospect Ravi, or Ravi's reaching out to me, I'm trying to ultimately help him solve a problem. I might have a product or service that can help him. I might not. But, now when I look at LinkedIn, again, when people are asking for advice on, what to post, how to post, I think, it gets a little cliche, but you have to add some value. So you're putting some content out there that people kind of want to go, I need to learn a little bit more about what this guy's saying. He's obviously, smart in a certain area, or he has, some subject matter expertise. But I think, from the selling side, that's something that I think you have to kind of build and curate there. So you want, who are you trying to sell to? Like, is it a specific niche or vertical or market? So, my strategy has always been follow those people, start to try and engage with them. So if you're prospecting them, or if you, want to do work with them, they're going to know who Ravi is, or who I am. So, that's number one. But number two, I think, it's everyone I've talked to, I mean, in that tech stack of sales tools, LinkedIn and LinkedIn Navigator, like, I haven't heard anybody who doesn't use that now. Like, those are basically table stakes. You need those platforms. Are there other tools you can use to get information on, what Ravi's cell phone number is, things like that? Absolutely. But I think what I see some people, I think, doing wrong sometimes is they jump too quickly. And listen, just because I've been on it since 2016, I know guys who've been on it for like a year, and they've already like surpassed me, just because they've invested so much time and energy into the platform. Because really, I think this last year is where the engagement's really exploded. But they're putting in the time and following the people that, that are in similar kind of industries, have similar mindsets, but also, engaging like nonstop with people within their verticals, within their industries, and they're on LinkedIn. So again, back to that old point, if that client isn't on LinkedIn, you're going to be wasting your time, trying to find him, or if he's on LinkedIn and he's not active. But if you can find those people that are active, then when it comes to prospecting, you can email, you can call, but then you can reach out through LinkedIn. So, the one thing we're really seeing now is it's this kind of multi-prong, right? LinkedIn, email, phone, like there's 3 or 4 different ways to hit people now, because it's like a war for attention, right? Like, how many times are you just like mass deleting emails that come in? Because you don't have time, right? So after that phone call and after that personalized video message that comes into LinkedIn, you're probably going to open it. And I mean, there's no like magic bullet. There's no tool that's going to break down that door anymore. I think people almost have to be more tenacious now. even though we have more tools. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Like you gotta be more forward thinking, and there's no classical education towards this.
No.
There's no forefront thinking of, hey, this is how to train people to think this way, or everyone's kind of compiling it on their own and figuring it out. Like I personally got onto started doubling down on LinkedIn only after Gary Vee, right?
Okay.
I started listening to Gary Vee like 2 years ago. This guy, random follow on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Every time I scroll by past his videos, sorry, on not even LinkedIn, this is on Instagram. Every time I scroll past the videos, he's yelling at me to produce more content. And that was his spiel like 2 years ago. It's like yell at people to get them excited.
Yeah.
And to do more things. And he was talking about how LinkedIn is the next platform, right? It's a growth platform. And what I appreciate really about him is that he talked about his platforms as growth mechanics, right? So as they grow and people flood in, if you can grow with it, your content, your brand can grow with it if you're targeted and you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And he was talking about how he had his growth because of the .com bubble, right? That was when he was younger. Like he rode the wave, had a .com company, and since then he's obsessed about like hacking platforms, growth level platforms, and using that growth to funnel his growth, like sucking a part of that growth into himself, refunneling that growth into part of himself. And I'm like, that's such a cool strategy.
Yeah.
And it's to the point where now he like invests into platforms, right? Because he plays that metric. You go out there and grow, but as you grow, if I can engage or have content here, right, I can engage that audience and suck some of that attention towards me. So as that platform grows up, right, I take this. I'm like, that's such an interesting way of looking at these platforms because everyone looks at it like, oh, it's an equity play. I wish I bought some Facebook. I wish I bought some on LinkedIn. But the attention play is also an equity play if you think about it like that.
Yeah.
Like the ability to take the attention out of a few seconds, a few minutes out of like hundreds of people's lives, daily lives. If they're tuning into what your content is, you kind of have a way in with them, right? Because they're paying attention to you. They actually know your name, you know your brand.
Yep.
So if you engage with them, they're more likely to pick up your call, pick up your, return your text,
absolutely,
return your messages. And that's like the business game that's now become evolved to. And this is so radically different from how sales has been treated as. Because, like I love this quote, like pre-internet, the sales was predatory, right? You had knowledge as a salesperson. Your target did not have knowledge of the industry or the product, right? You're taking advantage of lack of knowledge to provide a conversion.
Yeah.
And so that's why sales has such a negative stereotype, because up until the internet, for history of time, including sales, you can do a bad sale, lie to the customer, whatever it is, and you walk away and the sales computer, you get paid as a salesperson, you're moving on. Right?
Absolutely.
And that's why such a negative stereotype. But the internet's changed that, because now you can verify the individual, verify the organization, and if they screw you, you can leave a review that's gonna stay with them, right? You can give forewarning to others that's coming out. So it's kind of forced the market to become more accepting of the idea of value-based sales.
Yeah.
It's like, how am I giving you value before the sale, right? Through information like yourself, putting up posts, putting up information, putting up PowerPoints, presentations, webinars, whatever it is, selling through information, getting like validated from the market, and then pushing a market, which again serves an actual value.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, a lot of industries, that's what they're suffering from is the idea that they can't just hire somebody to just push a product anymore. They had to communicate value and their values properly.
Well, and the thing is, like, you hit some really good points there. The bar is so high now, I think, for someone in sales, because every customer can do their due diligence and self-educate. So you need to be that delta. So, I know your product does this. What can you tell me, Ravi, that I haven't been able to read or watch on YouTube? And, you got to do your homework to be able to tell them that. So they're probably going to be, customer stories or anecdotes that they can't, find somewhere. And the reality is, on LinkedIn, as you're building your brand, you're probably going to be sharing some of those experiences, because you're probably not, just posting feature functions about your products, because they can find that out, right? So again, you have to have that delta and share that with people. So they want to talk to Ravi. They're like, I got to go talk to Ravi because he just knows this industry. He knows the competing products. He knows what works. He knows what doesn't work. But to your point now, like that barrier, right, is like the bar is really high. You can't, like, I remember when I was on the tech side, like 15 years ago, I remember we had somebody that was selling the copiers, and he just like drop off a brochure. I was like, That's it. That's all he's got to do. Like, that's way too easy, man. I could do that. I could do that like 100 times better. and and
Yeah,
and the salespeople that are very good, right? They, you know, we've all heard the different approaches like Challenger, all these things, but I mean, they typically have a ton of knowledge, right? So you come out of there like they're educators, man. Like they've told you so much about what you're trying to do, whether it's product or a service. You're like, I got to go back and talk to Ravi because he knows so much. You know, he's just a person I trust. You know, back to your point, that you build that trust with knowledge. And I think again, that's something that you can be out there building on platforms like LinkedIn. Is look, I have this experience. Here's the things not to do. Here's the things to do. And it is. And the other thing is, you know, people want something instantly, but it is a long game. Like it. Sure, I've been on since '06, but it's really been in the last, you know, 8 or 10 months that I've really doubled down. And again, the people that have really ramped it up in a year, it's been a year of like, you know, posting consistently, finding kind of a niche, finding that audience that they really want to engage with. Nothing happens overnight, man. You know, just as I do. There's nothing. If it's quick, there's probably, you know, there's probably something shady about it.
yeah. No, absolutely. Like the idea of quick sales has definitely changed, right? The sales cycle is actually there's a pre-sales cycle before the even sales cycle, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of what we're talking about. Is how do you create validity in the marketplace with your potential customer base before they even convert to a sale? I mean, that's really the magic right now.
Yeah.
That's really where the game is, where like everything's focused on. It's not even at the endpoint conversion. It's before people are even thinking about it, about the problem or they face the problem. Is how do you get into their minds being like, this is the solution that you provide, this is the values that you provide, this engages me. So when that problem arises for them, they know where to come. Right?
Yeah.
And even if you reach out and if they don't come and you go to them, they're already warmed up to it.
Well, I think there's so much, there's like so much technical and so much information out there that, you know, like if anything, it's almost like there's people are just flooded, right? So you need to like distill it down for them. Like, you know, like people can download those white papers, people can watch those videos. The reality is like they want you to just like distill it down. Like, what is the delta here, right? Like between product X or product B, or the reality is it's often like, what's the experience? Because if it's a super transactional thing, it's probably just price, right? Low friction. Like, can I get this product, swipe my credit card, done? But if it's a complicated thing, they want to know like is Ravi going to take care of me versus, you know, competitor Y, and how can you articulate that? But yeah, on the low friction side, like that's just almost like a commodity race to the bottom. If you've got something you can transact, you got to make it low friction. Like it always blows my mind when there's something that I want to get and it should be super easy and it's not. I'm like, I'm trying to give you my money and you're making it difficult. How is this even possible today?
Yeah. Yeah, I have a few clients I work with that do that, right? Like, so we do sales for tech companies, and a lot of companies who don't know the value behind this level of thinking because it's so foreign to them. And tech is super like they have this problem with it because it's run full of engineers,
right?
And just like a layman would not know, like an engineer, like or like a software developer, there's a back end. There's a difference between a front end and a back end guy. The difference between analytics and like the UI person. Right, the skill sets, there's differences in that. They just kind of lump it all together. They lump sales. People look from outside in, lump sales together. Like even within the industry, we still kind of lump it together. And we're now like what I like is a specialization in sales, right? And going back to actually your point further about you have to clear the air for people, right? Clear through all the noise for people.
Right.
Like we're seeing like influencers coming in as salespeople, like salespeople turning in like, you know, kind of like influencers within their business. And I feel like there's really like a need here, like a transition point where like the salesperson not having to engage with the one or two companies, like sell for one company. Why can't I, as a salesperson, just translate value, my beliefs, what I'm interested in, you know, and build this following base and then sell to people the kind of companies or things that I want.
Right.
And this is one of the main reasons I've been following Joe Rogan a lot, right? Like the #1 podcast in the world, all this is like he's #1, but the way he translates information for people, right? He gathers a great base, like, and he's not the only one. There's a lot of podcasters, a lot of influencers out there who do this. They translate value by having great conversations or providing content or providing something of value to bring an audience in, and then use that validation to green light a product. It could be like a tech product. It could be a physical product you buy, whatever it is.
Right.
But people, because they feel like they know the person, they trust the person, they engage with the person, that kind of validation transfers the product.
Yep.
And what I'm interested in is like, instead of like companies, like business before, like especially in like the 20th century, was these giant companies that produce all these infrastructure, hire people underneath them, and they do what the company tells them, to now the broken down mechanics of a company become a small entity that provides product or service, then engages with these independents, who then validates them to the market on their behalf, right? Like the atomizing of the firm, as Dan Sullivan puts it, right? And it's like breaking apart of the mechanics within a larger company, of being at one structure,
Right.
and becoming more democratized, becoming more decentralized. I'm really interested in that trend towards it. And for example, like in China right now, they have live streamers who live stream product details. Like they don't just talk and then sell a product.
Wow.
They're like doing live telemarketing, and people would tune in, just like people in the 90s would tune into like a telemarketing infomercial and listen for like an hour while people sell you different things and call in to buy. There are live streaming platforms where live streamers will sit there and talk. Like there's one guy I watched, he's like in a fish market, and he's live streaming for fish market, talking about the individual fish.
No way.
Why is it good? Where does it came from? What you can do with it? How you can? And he's walking around a fish market talking about different types of fish, and people are through the app buying that fish, and people in the back end are selling the orders. There'll be women trying on dresses and showing how the different dresses look, and like like just like the fashion shows like on like City News or like any of those kind of things, right? And people are buying, right? So the way for sales is changing, because it's going from, again, like the quick sales, taking advantage of people's lack of knowledge, to now value-based sales.
Right.
And with that comes the opportunity to remove oneself from an organization and act as independent.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because that review piece, I could see that definitely transitioning into, obviously you have influencers like the Gary V's who could go out and do live product reviews. I mean, we all know about them on Instagram. They're doing a pretty good business there. But it makes me think in the tech space, like products like G2, where we can all Google something, and there may be some reviews of a restaurant. But now on that tech space, like G2 and I think Trust Radius, there's a few out there already. But like G2, like, I mean, a lot of people are really putting a lot of weight in those products now, because they want some kind of I guess not agnostic, but almost some kind of feedback. But it's really interesting when you think of, like, I'm just visualizing this fish market, right? I mean, somebody who's got a good following and is respected in an industry, there's no reason he couldn't start doing kind of like a live product review. And I think that the risk will always be, as soon as people find out if something's like pay for play, then the trust disappears. But video is massive, and people kind of want to see things, and they want to see kind of a short snippet. So I wouldn't be shocked if in the next 6 months to a year we start seeing that, where someone's doing live product reviews, and we can all Google, like, what's this product like, but it's typically just somebody kind of walking you through. But actually, and maybe this exists, maybe I don't even know about it, maybe I'm like behind the curve already. But it's really interesting, right? Because when I'm talking to clients, they always want that, they always want to kind of talk to that other client. They always want that reference, and they always want to see something. And when it comes from you, there's always a little bit of like, yeah, but you're giving me your twist, right? I want to hear it from someone else. So it's really interesting. And maybe that platform already exists, right? I mean, you got G2 that's just reviews, but almost like kind of that live review. Who knows, man? Like today, anybody can spin something up and have it, running tomorrow, and then scaling in a month.
Yeah. Absolutely. Like that's like the power of now, right? The ability to quickly position yourself into a market space.
Yep.
There's one company that I really love and follow. How they originated from, I won't name them because I'm going to talk about a little bit the insider scoop. But the origin story is they started as the founder went to an investor, got some capital, white labeled an existing solution that was working in a different market, brought it to North America, and started selling it. Right? Got a bunch of users behind it, proved the use case, use the sales as a proof of concept, went to other investors, took more capital, right? And then use that to change the software more, make it more custom, make it more appealing for the market, and growth curve it. And now the company's worth $30 million, right?
Wow.
So they didn't even invent the product, right? They just moved it within the space faster than even the parent company did, right? Who developed the actual software. And the way he was able to do it was because he just knew the product, he knew the solution, and he sold it, right? And it comes back down to like the chief job of a CEO. A lot of people forget this, is to sell.
Yeah.
I love Michelle Rodenoff because she talks about this a lot on LinkedIn, right? If you're a CEO, you're really a salesperson. You're selling the company. You're selling the company culture to your employees and people under you, and you're moving everyone towards a common vision, right? Like a lot of companies, like they miss this aspect of themselves. They have an executive who kind of got there because they built this product or service, but lacks the ability to think of that kind of sense. And it's interesting to even note that even like Steve Jobs, when Apple was booming, like he hired somebody else to perform this task because he wasn't able to do it at that caliber, right? The ability to step aside from a company as a founder and being like, hey, I need to plug this service in, someone who can do this, really shows that kind of simple character. And that's one of the main thinkings of Steve Jobs, I think, is like overlooked.
Yeah.
Is that at the peak of his growth, he stepped away from the head seat and gave it to somebody else because he knew someone needed to be there.
Amazon?
Give me 1 second, sorry. I think so. Hold on.
Hold on.
Yeah, it was Amazon.
That's funny. Just when you were mentioning kind of, the CEO has to sell. I mean, I couldn't agree more. I mean, sales-driven culture, we hear it all the time. And I remember I had a post basically saying like, we're basically selling 24/7, even if you're not in sales, right? Like so many things we do in life, whether it's interviewing, dating, trying to convince your kid to brush their teeth, trying to convince your spouse where you should go for dinner, like fundamentally that's selling. And so, I think everybody has it in their DNA. Some people don't like to do it, and that's okay. There'll always be a raging, debate. Should it be an introvert or an extrovert? The data will show you both of them perform well. And, my wife's a teacher. I tell her like, you're selling the curriculum to your students, man. You're selling why they should pay attention to you in class. So, back to, selling in a company, I think everybody's selling, right? The person that picks up the phone, the person that, greets you in the office, everybody's selling. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that being part of the DNA of a company. Because that's, selling is bringing in revenue, and revenue is like oxygen. Your company needs it.
Yeah. Can we talk a little more about that sales-driven mindset you have? Like, where did it come from? Like, why transition to sales? What was that? What brought you here?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I think in the back of my mind, I mean, I had paper routes. I bought and sold things when I was a kid. Like I was flipping things. I still have a few old hockey cards that, I'm convinced I'll be able to retire on. Not going to happen. But I think when I was, in kind of the tech support and then started to move more into kind of network admin and then consulting roles, I'd see the job of the salesperson. I thought I can do that. I have this knowledge. But until I actually kind of stepped my foot in there, I realized, there's a big difference between, having all this information, but then providing really what that customer needs. So they don't need, for example, every level of detail. So, if I think of a car salesperson, I mean, their job is, you might come in and say, I want a convertible. Somebody might say, perfect, sell them the convertible. But your job really is to go like, whoa, like what's your story, man? Like, do you have a dog? Do you have 5 kids? And, if you do have 5 kids, maybe you're going to return that convertible in a few days, right? So, you might have all that information, but your job really is to help them make a good decision. And longer term, like you want them to come back and buy another car. And so I always kind of saw also, the salesperson in the parking lot had the shinier car. So I thought, well, obviously I want that role. The reality is, that person that had the shinier car worked 10 times harder than I did to get there, right? So you and I both know there's no easy money in any job, and that salesperson that's worked that hard. They've built out that, that pipeline. They've built out, that strategy. And I really just love the art of selling, figuring out, what the deal is, what the market is. And I just, it's like a big problem to solve. There's some math, there's some science, there's a ton of psychology, like what's your client thinking? What's actually driving them to do this? So it's like a puzzle, man. It's like every day solving a big puzzle. Sometimes you're doing it on your own. Sometimes you're doing it with people. And the thing is, there's no real right way to do it, right? What I've loved about LinkedIn is I've been able to connect and network with people. There's Sandler training, there's John Barrows, like there's tons of schools, as you know, right? Schools of thought. There's no formal like degree, but most people kind of learn it out in the field. And I can learn from all these people. And to your point, I mean, you can kind of hack your way to becoming a better salesperson, and you can also hyper specialize. Like I'm in I guess SaaS sales, for lack of a better term, but you can be hyper specific around an industry. You can be outbound, you can be inbound. And so, I mean, what I love about it is, like in sports, you're a free agent. So if you perform well, you can go anywhere, right? Any team, you can play for any team. If you want to play with, the best team, and you want to be on the line with the, the A players, you just got to perform, and then you can get on that all-star team. And so I love it because it kind of feels like anybody can make it.
Yeah. Like one of the parts of sales that I love, like it's how democratized it is and how freeing it is. Because if you can perform, you actually have a lot more power within an organization or within your life than you would do in any other industry, because it's literally the lifeblood of the economy. Right? It's the transfer of value.
Yep.
Right? Monetary value, of information value, all that. So, I want to get a little more into your mindset about like, what is like a perfect sale for you? Like, do you have like a sale that like you still remember and be like, wow, like that's like a hallmark moment for me?
That's a great question, and I feel fortunate because I've got a nice mix of kind of mid-market and some enterprise stuff. So, the enterprise stuff, some people just don't like it. They hate the length of the sales cycle. What I find fascinating about it, right, it is a long game, takes a lot of patience, but it's a lot more kind of tactical around. There's a lot of players, there's a lot more strategy, and you just have to have a ton of patience. There's none of those that really jump to mind, but what I found in the mid-market is interesting is the speed of some of those deals. But what I think is often, I don't want to say overlooked, but it's the speed. Like people, there's tons of data around a lead coming in. If you're first to kind of pick the phone up and call them, and I can think of a few in the last 3 months that have closed because were we the right company to do business with? Absolutely. But we're also the first one to contact with them. And I think a lot of people forget, like that first point of contact and then even that follow-up, like you're already building up some trust there, right? So, I mean, if you can be on your game when you call them, I mean, you can do a ton of research like in 2 minutes just to find out, okay, this is the company. We probably have a bunch of things that could help them. So boom, you can get on the phone with them, and people, already that level of trust goes right through the roof if I'm the first guy to call you back, Ravi, versus you might be thinking I'd love to do business with the company and they don't call you back for like 4 days. You're like, what is going on with these guys? Like you're already starting to doubt, if I do business with them, I'm gonna have to wait 4 days to hear back from them every time. Like that's crazy, right? So they've already like dropped right down. And then again, like how quick are you to get back with them? Because the reality is, I think people basically see, especially in SaaS sales, they don't understand. They assume it can be instant, and in some cases, like it can be almost instant, right? And so, I mean, it can be your worst enemy because you can build that expectation. But that's what I've really liked is, people had this, urgency, and you're able to kind of match that. Those are some of my favorite ones, and not because I don't have the patience for the longer ones, but you were able to just like pounce on it.
Absolutely. I mean, that's like a very gratifying experience when you find the opportunity and you're just fulfilling it right away. It's an empowering thing, right? Like you found a problem and you have been able to solve it for somebody.
Yeah.
Right. I want to swing back a little bit to that feeling, right? So I mean, you've currently talked about how you've been working home now for a number of years, right? Like, and you're able to do that because you're in the industry you're in and the
For
company
sure.
you're in, right? Was how big of a factor was that in leading to the direction that you're in now? Working from home, being able to have it run your own hours.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I got into it, I mean, I started in pre-sales and, remote work still really wasn't a big thing, I don't think. Um, then when I got into selling originally, it still really wasn't. And then it was not till really my second job where there really wasn't anybody in my office that I interacted with. All the teams I worked with were remote. So that's when I first transitioned. And I'll be honest, it was tough because I'm a social person, and I missed that. But fortunately, I'm on the phone or on video a lot of the day, so I still get that piece. But what's actually been really interesting is I find it's made me a much better, makes me manage my time better. So I was that guy that could like run into Ravi at the water cooler and we'd just like shoot the breeze for an hour and, wasn't super productive. So now I find like, I can jam in more into a day and not waste a lot of time. And to be frank with you, like, I don't know if I'd really be interested in any roles that weren't remote now because I have a ton of autonomy. And I think most companies now realize like that autonomy, you're basically telling your employees, like, I trust you. I trust you a ton. And I think you're going to find more and more. There's just some people's like, that's not even an option. Now, do you have to get on a plane once in a while or get on a train and go meet with the team? For sure. Like there's face to face will never go away. I still want to meet with some of my prospects and clients if I can in person. Obviously right now it's not possible, but I think that remote piece, and right now we're seeing it, right? Some companies are like, well, I guess we could do this, but I think sadly the remote piece, the companies that are still hesitant, it really boils down to trust.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think what's super interesting right now is like we're swinging from an economy where 4% of the workforce only worked remotely to now almost it's been completely flipped, where everyone's at home and working from home.
Yeah.
And I was talking about this earlier on our earlier podcast, how this is our 6th week, like we're swinging into a lockdown. And if you look at the habit forming, right? It takes about 6 weeks for new habits to become ingrained.
Okay.
So in this week, it's become, all the processes and all the newness of working from home and running remotely is now being ingrained into people worldwide. There's millions of people who are now have swung into the process of working from home and figuring it out and making it work remotely that have gotten used to it, right? I really feel like that's going to be a blowback when going back to normal, which is going back to workplace, going back to that, and I think it's going to be system wide. Like even the top levels are looking at, why was I spending $30,000 for an office space, per month on this office space to bring everyone in when we're clearly getting the same amount of work done for much less cost.
Yeah.
We're more efficient in that kind of sense, right? In an operational standpoint. So I feel like this is going to be the forced learning curve where a lot of the market's going to switch to working remotely and working from home and all these kind of things. And right from the get-go, like when we first had a conversation about how you're finding the lockdown, and when you told me like, I'm not really feeling it because I've been working at home for a while, and I'm seeing you like you're in a suit sitting at home in your home office, and like you're clearly more invested in that because like if you like yourself, more people who are seasoned in the work from home environment talk about the importance of dressing just like you're going to work, of putting yourself in the mentality of going to work.
Yep.
This is my work environment, and you segregate a place to work within your home where that's fully focused towards work, and the importance of mindset and maintaining yourself. You have a head start towards this mentality. So, in the spirit of hashtagging COVID-19, can you instill some of that advice onto our audience? Like, how do you get
Absolutely.
more working?
Yeah, I think it's a great question because I think, what was really difficult for a lot of folks and myself included, 5 years ago is, like you said, it takes 6 weeks to kind of form that habit. So, how many people had, their commute, their coffee, their routine in the office, go to the gym, like, that was like, ingrained into them. So now to kind of go to a totally different space where, when you went home, you had a wholly different, mindset, routine, that's where you chillax. So, what I've told people is I still have to have a routine at home, right? I still, have a routine, workout, shower, breakfast. And then I tell people I commute to my basement office, but, and, do I wear like a t-shirt on a Friday or something? But sure, there's nothing wrong with that. And I don't care if people on the other end of the line want to wear, a tracksuit, if they want to wear a tuxedo, like, I don't really care. But for me, I had so many years in office and client facing that it is like a mental shift, right? So, if I feel like I'm ready to, get into a professional engagement just because of the way I'm put together today, it kind of, it hits my, mental kind of framework of, this is how you're kind of, you got your game suit on, you're ready to kind of be in a professional mindset. So I think, that structure is super important, like more important, because you have to build that structure. Whereas at work, it's almost like, it's there for you. And so I think it's really important to still have a routine. And it's not easy for everyone because everybody doesn't have that space. But I find even just having the space where you're going to work, because before, we'd like commute, go to a place, and then we'd kind of go away from that place. So you had some time typically to go from your like office to your home. They were very separate spaces. So you could kind of switch off, even though it is hard with, phones to switch off. But you know what I mean? Like people could kind of like, take their suit off and then, put their flip-flops on. Whereas now it's like, you just go from one room to another. So I know for myself that was tricky. And I know for a lot of people, they find that difficult because they're like, well, the dining room table is just like, I'm here all day. And so they're actually more exhausted. And another tip I would give people is this, Zoom or Teams or whatever you're using, like the burnout from just doing this all day is real. Because it's like, we're on right now, right? We're on camera. We're like hyper engaged. When you were in an office, you weren't looking at yourself. Like when you're having this conversation, it's a lot more deep, and you have to be like really fully invested, right? Whereas like the four of us around a boardroom, you're just listening to Ravi talk and then John and Jane. But here, like I see myself, you see yourself. So it's like, if you do this for 8 hours, dude, it'll knock you out, man. And I've been telling people, and I'm trying to practice what I preach. I take like half of my calls now outside walking, like no video. I'm like, look, man, I've known you for 10 years. I don't need you to see you. Like we can just talk. And you can be sitting behind a desk looking at yourself on a video all day. I don't think that's healthy. So there is a downside.
Absolutely. Like, yeah, absolutely. Like, and like, in one view, like the advantage is we can do more calls and talk to people who are international audience, like super easily, more fluidly. But sorry. So the idea of being on all the time is definitely fatiguing.
Yeah.
I mean, for example, even on Zoom, I find myself like even right now, I'm not on the mode where it pops up, whoever's talking pops up on the screen. Because if I'm talking, my screen comes up, I'm getting distracted by seeing myself.
Yeah.
Right? Like on a group call and whatever. Just like the small effects affect how we are and how we communicate and how we think, right? Because we're seeing that. I know what you're talking about. Like I'm not sure. I've seen the same other postings about that. The studies are coming out saying that people who are feeling more exhausted because of these video calls, because they feel like they have to be on all the time, and seeing themselves interact with people, also have that connotation, right?
And you're thinking about what's in the background. Like you're worried about, your kid walking in. You're like, is my house a mess? Like you're just like more hyper aware of what you're looking like. And I mean, let's be honest. I mean, me in front of this camera and you in front of this camera, like, like everything's HD now. Like, so people are like, man, I gotta be like, I gotta look good. Whereas when you come into the office, right? Like I'm not this close to you when we're talking, right? So things are recorded. So it's like, there's lots of good sides to working from home, but I think this piece, people are actually starting to be aware now. Like you can overdo it, right? Video's great, but I mean, if you've known somebody and worked with them for a decade, you probably don't need to see their face, man. You could probably just jump on a phone call.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk a little bit more about the changes in business we've seen now because of COVID-19, right? From moving more from work yourself, how you operate, to how you operate as a business to the external world, right? How is this lockdown? How is COVID-19? How has all this changed business for you? What are the positives, negatives you see?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, I feel pretty fortunate because we're about 150 at Encore, and I've been at home. I think 70% of our workforce has been at home, and again, the good side is like we sell solutions that help people work remotely. So this has been pretty good. I think right now what I think we're seeing a lot of, for the people who aren't used to working from home, and let's be clear, what's unique about this situation is everyone has to work from home, most people's kids are home. There's also a pandemic, so there's like this added element of like for some people, there's just a lot of stress because either their family or even somebody in their immediate family could be at risk, right? So I think it's easy to go, hey, look, everybody's working from home. No, like a lot of people are like, I got a kid trying to do their homework behind me. I'm trying to close deals or so it isn't normal, right? So I think we're one thing we're seeing is that what's that?
Is it affecting your sales process on the other people on the other end? They like you might be used to work from home, but they are now like your prospects.
Right.
Are you seeing prospects now working from home and dealing with the awkwardness of that? And is it affecting your deal flow?
Yeah, I think so. We're seeing kind of 2 to 3 different things. One is, either a company's going, hey man, like we're distributed now and we weren't really ready for this. We need a couple things to kind of help us be able to continue to work effectively. Or we're like an essential service. So kind of what we were wanting to do with you is like super low priority now. Like we're making animal food, like that's priority number 1. Or we're like in a really affected industry, right? And we don't know what we're going to be in a few months. So they're putting the brakes. I would say kind of just from the customer conversation, like tons of talk on LinkedIn, for example, about empathy. And I kind of find some irony there that, we should have always been empathetic. But now, I think you just have to be a little bit more kind of just raw and just be like, look, man, I know your life's probably crazy right now. Like you probably are dealing with homeschooling a kid. This may or may not be a priority for you. So I found people are actually just pretty open to just be very open with you. Like we're all kind of in this struggle together. And I think they're just a little bit more open around, yeah, this is actually something we really need to look at, or being very open around like, we just don't know what the next month's going to look like. Like, I have no certainty around this, and that's okay. And so I think when talking to customers, I think you always should have been empathetic, but now I think it's just the reality is like they probably don't know a lot, right? So you probably can't be in a position to really push something, and I think that's okay. And hopefully your senior management realizes like you've got to probably relook at what those quotas were, because who isn't affected, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the interesting part about who isn't affected. Everyone's being affected, and
Yep.
in different ways.
Yep.
What I'm particularly interested about right now is, we're hearing all these stories about, all these people, like 80% of the market right now is suffering, because there are changes, they're becoming more inefficient. The front stores are closed. The business has ground to a halt. They're kind of waiting it out. But there is 20% in the market space who's completely, the market's going to be blown up for them, especially in the technology spaces, right? Where there's suddenly more customers than ever. The barriers that they might have had previously are gone. The competitors they've faced before are disillusioned, right, of what's happening. So there's a lot of entry-level companies, medium-sized companies that are actually aggressively growing. Even large ones, like the Netflix of the world, right, are just experiencing phenomenal growth.
Yeah.
And they don't know how to grow in this world either, where everything's remote and distributed and running. And that's really where my interest is. Like, how do you deal with growth when you're dealing with this newness of the world? You can't go and rely on old, tried and tested methodologies.
Yeah.
Right. Have you experienced this, or have you talked to companies that are on heavy growth mode and trying to deal with growth at this point?
If I think of just some of the clients I'm dealing with, there's not a lot that come to mind. But the one story that does come to mind is kind of in the online grocery space. So, it was interesting with somebody out of San Francisco that this is their whole business model, right? Like they don't have kind of like a grocery store, they have a warehouse. And he was saying like, this is, your traditional grocery store. The reason they're struggling is the aisles are meant for you and I to go through with a grocery shopping cart and pick things that are convenient. A warehouse for doing deliveries is more like, an Amazon warehouse. It's all about efficiency. So, we're in a good position now to scale and grow, but your Loblaws, like I've done the delivery service and they're like scrambling because some poor person's running around with a shopping cart trying to fill that order, when, the other guy that built his warehouse for efficiency, he's just like, no, like we got, we have a route, we know where all this stuff is. boom, they can fill those orders. And so I think, you know, there's industries like that that are trying to scramble and figure out. I mean, we've seen, you know, pizza deliveries going through the roof. You know, they've had that figured out. Like guys like Domino's that had an app, you know, they're just like, we just need more people now, right? They can scale. They just need like more humans. So it's interesting where I think some of these guys are kind of scrambling. So I think some of these guys are realizing like, look, you know, the model we had wasn't ready for this. And I think, you know, the ones that can pivot and capture some of that market share, I think some of those people, man, if they have a good experience with that online shopping of grocery delivery, they aren't going to go back. So there's a pretty interesting opportunity right now for some of these guys. I think like the Netflix, yeah, they've seen a spike, but the reality is when we all get to go do what we wanted to do, there's going to be a massive drop because summer's going to be here. We're going to be able to travel. So I think some of these spikes, you know, like Zoom went from 10 to 300 million users. People are going to go back to doing their music and dance classes face to face after this, right? So they're going to see a drop. So it's interesting where there's a bunch of spikes right now. But on the e-com side, you know, that's interesting, right? So if people now built an online store, you know, and the consumer had a good experience, I think some of those ones are going to stick.
Absolutely. E-commerce, a lot of e-commerce companies are making a killing right now. And the beauty of e-commerce companies is like they're so lean.
Yeah.
A 5%, 10% company can do so much now. Yeah. The tools and capabilities that are existing. They can automate away functions and empower the individuals to do more, right?
Yeah.
And even then, like you just outsource different capabilities when you're growing to other agencies and other companies to fulfill that.
For sure.
So absolutely, yeah. But this has been great. Before we wrap up, can you tell us a little bit about the system you sell, about the company you work at?
Yeah, for sure. So I'll share a couple things with you. I mean, by day I work for a Microsoft partner called Encore Business Solutions. We've been around for like 30 years. So I spend a good part of my time talking to people about, you know, some of the different collaboration tools, financial applications, CRM. And so, you know, I work with customers across North America. And then, you know, not by night, but one thing that we've been getting a lot of fun traction with is something on Fridays called 5 on Friday, where we have salespeople that can come in and practice their demo, their call script, their pitch. And essentially, you know, it's volunteer driven. We just get people on the call to practice their pitch. And then we get some, you know, 5 to 6 people giving feedback. So kind of sales coaching. So it's this cool, safe space where, you know, rather than come in here and say, hey, man, I'm launching this product. This is kind of my marketing strategy. You know, this is what I'm doing. This is what's working. This is what's not. And then you can get some live real-time feedback from sales professionals from every corner of the world, to be honest. So it's been fun because I'm learning a ton because, you know, there's never, you know, I'm always a student. There's so many things I can learn in the selling world. So that's been super fun. And I can send you some details around it, and anybody's welcome. So you can be selling for like a week or you can be selling for 10 years.
Perfect. Sorry, it's one. Wife just walked by and the dog just went a little crazy here. But also, François, let's wrap this up.
Yeah.
I think that's a great segue for us to close, but really enjoyed this conversation.
For sure.
Stick around for a bit and we'll do a quick debrief.
Yeah, for sure, man. Awesome.